You know, it's interesting to me, every time we did evening prayer tonight, in the first psalm response, blessed are those who are called to the wedding feast of the Lamb. And then in the psalm prayer, when you took on flesh, Lord Jesus, you made a marriage of mankind with God. You made a marriage with mankind. Right? So I'm thinking that what's it saying there basically is that it's using analogously marriage to describe our faith relationship with God. We are married to Christ through baptism. Right? The Catechism speaks about the nuptial bath of baptism in the section on marriage. It refers to baptism as the nuptial bath where we are married to Christ. So, marriage is used throughout the Bible in many different ways. In the singular sense, in the psalm response prayer, at the wedding feast of the marriage, we are called to the eternal communion with God in heaven. So, I'm thinking to myself, if marriage, as we understand it as Christians, is used to speak about our faith relationship with God, they mutually affect one another. They mutually inform one another. They mutually help us look at the other. In other words, the marriage of our faith and the marriage sacrament, right, or covenant. So, if each mutually help to inform and to enlighten the other, what could we say today? Given the state of the church, given the state of people's faith, how they define faith, how they understand what it means to be a Catholic, and then considering the state of marriage today, what conclusions do you think you might be able to come to? Okay, good.
Can you repeat that?
The complementarity of it. But for example, when people say, I have faith, I'm a believer and I have faith as a Catholic. And so, what they generally mean by that can be very different than what the church means and understands it is to have theological faith. The gift of theological faith that God gives us is understood in a very biblical, very theological way by the church. Faith is, the act of faith and the object of faith, how we believe and what we believe, consent and assent to the deposit of faith, surrender, obedience of faith, etc., etc. Right? But people describe faith in a lot of different ways. They describe it in ways that suit their particular needs at a particular moment. So that in a way affects the way they view marriage, and vice versa. When marriage is seen in a particular way, where divorce is normal, infidelity is normal, the way people prepare for marriage is practiced unchastely, right? It affects the way people view faith. Right? If they see the example of the marriage covenant lived out in a certain way, that might naturally or might inform the way they view faith. If faith can be something I determine for myself, then it's not that difficult to come to the conclusion that marriage could be something I determine for myself. What about polygamy, for example? Right? We don't believe in polygamy. We can't have many brides or many bridegrooms. But how do we view faith sometimes? Potentially, yeah, we talked about idolatry. Sometimes we can, at a particular moment in our life, or whatever's pleasing to us, we can assent to some aspect of faith, or another aspect of faith, or another aspect of faith, depending on where we are. That if we need to go to Mass on Easter Sunday and on Christmas, or get ashes on Ash Wednesday. Right? And then we can also be worshiping, equally or more so our job, our work, our money, our status. Right? So we can have many marriages and people, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, I don't know how to say it positively, is we don't have in the Catholic Church polygamy in the strict sense, where you're married at one time to 2 or 3 different people. But we do, in a sense, have a serial polygamy that people are married to one person, but they're civilly divorced, and married to another person, but in the Church's eyes, they're still married to their first spouse, and yet they're living in a marriage situation with their second spouse. It's a form of pseudo-polygamy. It's just not all at one time. It's just at separate times. So I think that there is a connection. I think biblically there's a connection, obviously, between marriage and what our relationship with God looks like. Our relationship with God is a marital relationship. So if marriage is deemed a certain way, it's going to influence the way we view faith. And the way we view faith is going to inform the way we view marriage. They mutually support one another. So it shouldn't be surprising to us of what we see today.